Hey everybody, Board Game Bob back here with you again, and today I want to tell you about a game that I backed on Kickstarter and received recently, and it's called Cascadia. Cascadia is from Flat Out Games. It plays from 1 to 4 people, takes about 30 to 45 minutes, and it's for ages 10 and up. It's a light, easy game, but I think even hardcore gamers are going to enjoy it, and so I wanted to tell you about a little bit about it. It's got a few different genres. It's got some tile laying, it's got some tableau building, and it's a set collection game. So I'm gonna go through this video here for you. I'm gonna teach you about how to play. I'm gonna show you a few sample turns, and then I'm gonna skip to end game and just show you the scoring, because you don't have to watch the whole game to figure it out. So let's jump right into it. This game doesn't have a whole lot of different things going on, even though there's some depth to it. So there's different territory tiles here. There's 5 different types of habitats. We have the wetlands, we have the forests, we have the prairies, we have the mountains, and we have the rivers. So those are the 5 different types of habitats. There are tiles that have 2 different habitats on them, but for the moment I'm just showing you the single ones. And then the other thing that's in this game is the wildlife. So there are wildlife tokens. There's 5 different types of animals. These are the bears, these are the salmon, these are the hawks, these are the foxes, and these are the elks. And except for these nature tokens that I'll tell you about in a minute, that's really all you have to know about the game to know the parts. So what you're going to do is you're going to be taking a tile and you're going to be taking a wildlife token, and I'll show you that in a minute. And it's as simple as you're going to place a wildlife token on a habitat tile on a type of habitat that they want to be on. So in this case, this particular wetlands area can only house a salmon. This forest can only house an elk. This prairie can only house a salmon. This mountain can house a bear, and this river can house a hawk. You're going to see some of these don't necessarily make sense. You wouldn't see a salmon in the middle of a prairie in real life. But in this game, the way you're trying to combine and score points, it needs to be some of these combinations that don't make that much sense otherwise. So in the game, all you're going to do, there's 5 different sets of scoring cards. These particular ones are all the beginner ones. They all have A on the bottom, and they're just slightly different ways that you're going to want to score your animals. So the foxes want to be next to unique other animal types. So you're going to want to place a fox. You can place one fox next to a fox, but you're not going to want to surround a whole bunch of foxes together, or you're not going to get a lot of points from that fox. And I'll go into the scoring later. The hawk is solitary. This hawk wants to be placed with no other hawks around it. It doesn't matter if there's tiles around it. You just don't want hawks around it, and it's going to score more points for the number of hawks that you have that aren't adjacent. The elk just want to be in a straight line of elk. The salmon want to be in a long run of salmon. So you don't want to have a cluster of all the salmon together, but you do want as long of a connected line, at least 7, and that's going to get you the most points on this card. And the last animal type is bears, and the bears want to be in mating pairs for this set of cards. So you're going to want 2 bears together, not surrounded by other bears. Again, it doesn't matter if there's tiles there, it doesn't matter if there's animals on the tiles, as long as the animals on the tiles are not bears. So those are really the components. The game, if we set up here for a 2-player game, is really quite simple. You are just going to lay out 4 tiles randomly. You are going to put out different animal types randomly. Each player is going to start with a connected 3 habitat connected that always has 1 single type and then 2 dual types. So you're going to actually start with all 5 types of terrain. And then the last bit that I really need to tell you about is this little pine cone symbol here that also has a white arrow, so you see both of them. If and when you place the right type of animal on top of this tile, so for instance, if I got an elk and I was able to place it there, that would grant me a pine cone token. The pine cone tokens are either worth 1 point at the end of the game, and or you can spend them during the game in order to break it. So I'll tell you about that. So your typical turn is literally going to be taking 1 pair of a wildlife with a territory tile, a habitat tile. And it's as simple as, you say, I'm going to take these 2. And if that player did this, they're going to place the habitat tile in their tableau. The only thing that they need to do is make sure they put it adjacent to at least one other edge. So that's the only requirement. You can't put it like that, but you could put it like this or like this. But in general, you're going to try to match up terrain types because you're going to score more points for having bigger areas that are of the same type. So in this case, this player would have maybe taken that. And if they took the salmon and put it right on this tile, they would then get themselves a nature token, which they can later use to spend. What the nature tokens allow you to do is mix up, and you could either take, say, this tile and this salmon if you wanted to. So that's a way you'd spend the token. You'd have to put your pine cone back, but in that case, you know, you'd be able to do that. The only other things, if there's 3 animals of the same types, in this case there's 3 salmon, the player has the option to wipe out these salmon and put 3 different tokens out. If there were, instead of 3 salmon or of any animal, if there were 4 of the same animal, then it has to all be wiped. These would all go away and you would get 4 new random animals. And the other thing that a pine cone could be used for is to wipe whichever tokens you wanted to wipe. So you could spend this pine cone token in order to get rid of these 2 salmon if you wanted to draw 2 more from the bag, and let's say you get this. That's really all you need to know to play the game. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go through just a couple of turns for each of these players, and then we're going to just fast forward and you'll see how to do the end game scoring after the game is complete. So in this case, this player on the left is going to go first. They're going to select these 2 together. They're going to place the salmon on top of the special tile, which is going to earn them a pine cone, and they're going to place this right here. We then are going to draw out 1 more tile. We are going to draw out 1 more animal, and now it's the right player's turn. The right player, oops, doesn't get to start with that elk. That would be cheating. But the right player does want to get their own pine cone, so they're going to take this selection right here. They're going to put their forest next to the forest, and they're going to put their elk right there so that they get themselves a pine cone. And literally, you put out a tile, you put out an animal, and it's back to the left player's turn. So we're going to do 1 more turn here. We're going to take, this player is going to take this group, so they're going to take this fox. They're going to put it on this tile that could house a fox or a hawk. They put it there. They're going to take this, and they're going to match it up with their mountain habitat here. This gives them the option of putting 2 bears together in any of these orders. And we are going to put out another set of tiles. And then for this player, they want to take this prairie tile that would house a salmon. So they're going to actually spend their nature token in order to take the non-matching pair. So they're going to place this here, and they're going to take the salmon here. That gets them actually their nature token right back. And then we would put this here. All right, so that's the basic way to play. Now I'm going to go ahead and just finish out the game, and then I'll show you how scoring works. So give me just a minute, and I'll be right back. Okay, we have finished the game. We have the left player's habitat over here. We have the right player's habitat over here. They're slightly different shaped. It's just going to depend on which tiles come out. The game includes a nice score sheet to help you out. And I'm just going to show you animal by animal, and I'm going to go in the order of the score sheet. So for the bears want to be in mating pairs, and they score increasing amounts of points for the number of sets of bears you have. So this player has 1 set of bears here and a 2nd set of bears here. That's 2 pairs of bears for 11 points, which I've got there. Elk want to be in straight lines. So this player has 2 elks here that is worth 5 points, and they have 1 elk here by itself that's worth 2, so that brings it to 7. Salmon want to be in the long strings of lines, so this player actually went very salmon heavy strategy. They've got 6 in a row here that is worth 20 points, plus they have 3 in a row here that's worth an additional 8, so that brings them to 28. The hawks want to be solitary, so as long as they have a hawk with no others around it, doesn't matter if there's animals on tiles or they're blanks, or even if there are tiles. So each of these 3 hawks count, and 3 hawks count for 8 points. And lastly, we've got the foxes, and the foxes they get points for each unique animal they're near. So this fox is near 1 animal, so that's worth 1 point. This fox is worth 2 different animals, so that one's worth 2. And this fox is worth 3 points because he's with 3 different animals. The 2nd salmon doesn't score a point. So that brings it to 6, and that brings their total animal wildlife score to 60. The right player, very similar. Just wanted to show you though, they only have 1 set of bears, so that's worth 4. They did have the line of 4 elk in a row, which is worth 13 points, and then they have 1 solitary row, so that brings them 15. They didn't have nearly as salmon heavy strategy, so they just had 2 in a row, which is worth 5, plus a solitary one, which is worth 2. Then the hawks, they went very hawk heavy, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hawks that are all solitary, and according to the card, that's worth 18 points. And then for the foxes, they have this fox that's worth 1, 2. It does count for a fox next to it, so it's a hawk and a fox, but it doesn't score for this one. This fox scores 1, 2 also. This fox scores for 1, 2, 3. This fox scores for 7, 8, 9, and this fox scores for 10, 11. So actually I think I got one off on here, but the foxes are actually the most complicated to count. Then similarly, what we're looking for with the habitats is each player is going to determine the largest area of each type, and they're going to write that down. So for in this case, this starts with mountains. This player's largest mountain area is these 3 contiguous mountain areas that combine. My one knock on this game is that the tiles, if they either have 1 terrain type or they have 2, and I feel like the edges aren't as crisp as I wish they would be, and so we've had a little bit of difficulty at the very start figuring out which one it was. But so this player's biggest area with mountains is worth 3. It doesn't matter how many other mountains they have other places, you're only going to score your biggest area. This person's biggest area is forest, is actually only 1. So like this is where I was saying it almost looks like those 2 touch, but those aren't touching. So the biggest area that they ended up with in forest is 1. The biggest savanna area or yellow area here is 3. Their biggest wetlands area is 4, which is these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then their biggest water area is these 2, which is 2. We do the exact same for the player on the right hand side. The player on the right hand side did a lot better job at matching up their territories. So for instance, they have 4 contiguous forest tiles, or 5 actually. They have, because this one is attached, 3, 4, 5. They had 4 of the mountains, they had 5 of the savanna, 3 of the wetlands, and then 2 of the water. And then you also give bonuses for whoever had the biggest areas. And the player count does matter a little bit for how you assign bonuses and ties and things like that. But in a 2-player game, whoever had the most gets 2 points. And if there's a tie, each player gets 1 point. So you then add up your tiles to see how many points you got for that. Any leftover pine cone tokens are a point each. So the player on the left had 2 leftover pine tokens. And that brings the right player to the winner with a score of 80 to 78. So that's really how you play. It's a good game. I definitely recommend it. I'm going to score this about an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a very easy game to get to the table, to explain. It does take half a game for people to sometimes catch on to the scoring, and that's why I really wanted to go over the scoring with you, because I think after spending a little bit of time watching this video, you're really going to be set up and ready to play. You're going to be ready to teach this to anybody. The game is really good. The habitat tiles or the animal tiles are these wood pieces that have a little bit of heft. It comes with a bag that you get to shake these up in, and I definitely recommend this game. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, and all that stuff's free. So I will catch you all on the flippity flip. On the flippity flip. I'll catch you on the flippity flip.